So ladies and gentlemen, I ask that you put your hands together and welcome our mayor, Mayor Pete Buttigieg, as he comes to the stage.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening. Thank you. Please. Thank you so much. Thank you, Vice President White, for that introduction. I don't think I'll ever live down that article about being the mayor you've never heard of. Thank you to Reverend Patton. Thank you to our South Bend Fire Department Honor Guard. And let's hear it one more time for those student performers. That was fantastic. I want to thank the staff here at the Morris Performing Arts Center for helping to bring this evening about, and President Scott and members of the South Bend Common Council here tonight, along with City Clerk Karima Fowler. I would also be remiss if I did not acknowledge my spouse, Chasten Glesman. Without his indulgence, it would not be possible for me to do this work. As well as the attendance of my mother and the presence in memory of my father. I'd also like to introduce to you over 20 current and former members of the South Bend Youth Task Force, a diverse and talented group of high school students who have worked on important issues and helped me better understand what is at stake in our city's future. Please stand and be recognized. And of course, thanks to all of you for joining tonight, whether you're here in the audience or whether you're watching online. I'm addressing you this evening with a mix of emotions, knowing that this is my 8th and final opportunity to present the people of South Bend with an account of the state of our city. On one hand, it's difficult to accept that I will not be doing this same thing a year from now. For the better part of a decade, the city of South Bend has been the work of my life. That work has been so rewarding, so demanding, and so absorbing that it is difficult to believe it will end in a few short months. On the other hand, it is also difficult to believe that this really is my 8th State of the City address. It feels in many ways as though I just got here, as though just yesterday I was knocking on doors on the West Side or in Harders Heights, introducing myself, trying to explain how to say my name, and promising a fresh start for the city of South Bend. The passage of time only becomes believable when I reflect on how the last few years of this decade are so different from the first few. How much has changed in this community since the snowy New Year's Day in 2012 when I took the oath. In those years since then, streets have changed their course, structures have risen and fallen, entire departments in the city have been created or transformed. A new generation of public servants has stepped forward to contribute their talents and help guide this community. And this small city of ours has become a living example of how the industrial Midwest can fashion a new and better life for itself, not through nostalgia or by way of impossible promises to return to the past, but by an insistence that change be made to work for us and a belief in our ability to own our future. Perhaps the most striking set of transformations amid South Bend's comeback has to do with our economy. When I took office, our community had been hit even harder than most by the blows of the Great Recession. Some neighborhoods looked as though they had been in a recession ever since the departure of Studebaker in 1963. We were even characterized, or I should say mischaracterized, as a dying city by national media in 2011. A view that is typical of the attitude of the national press toward our part of the country as it saw young people leaving and manufacturing jobs dwindling. Yet by the time that article was published, South Bend had already demonstrated that it had the building blocks of a better future. A data economy was quietly emerging around the fiber infrastructure that lay beneath our feet. A partnership with the University of Notre Dame was yielding extraordinary results, from the highly visible Eddy Street Commons development opened in 2009 to the far less visible but even more valuable smart sewer technology collaboration that suggested a new way for cities to benefit from research and experimentation on campus. Still, there was a crisis of confidence in our economy. By the time I took office in 2012, there were bitter debates over who should take the blame for the state's economic development arm not having done a major deal here in years, arguments over whether our region could be a good place to do business, and even earnest debates over whether the arrival of Eddy Street would signal the death knell of any kind of restaurant scene in our downtown. Today, we have our answer for whether a community like ours can thrive in the 21st century. Unemployment fell from 11.8 to 4.1%, and no less importantly, closed in on the national average and in some cases dipped below it, as in 2017. Population is estimated to have grown 1% between 2012 and 2017, a modest number but a very meaningful one for a city that lost a quarter of our population after the 1960s. We've seen billions in investment come to our city, and over 15,000 jobs have been added in our metro area. Much of this resurgence has happened within walking distance of where we are gathered tonight. So swift and so welcome is this growth, we may forget how recently the LaSalle building stood empty and the JMS was in serious need of repair. How recently the idea of people living in the Hibbard building by the Gates Chevy lot would have seemed laughable, no less than that of a 7-story development rising on the East Bank or a groundbreaking on a transformed commerce center. Not long ago, we were asking if the Chase Tower might just need to be torn down. Walking down Main Street just a few years ago, shoulders squared a little bit against the rush of 4 lanes of one-way traffic evacuating the downtown at rush hour, you might have wondered aloud about whether we could ever get the Hall of Fame off the city's books and back on the tax rolls, or if any further investment in Kovaleski Stadium and the Silverhawks was worth the risk, while the broken windows of the Studebaker Assembly Building loomed over the stadium and over the whole downtown. Now, you can make out the new facade of that same building as you walk or bike along that same street, past the statue of Dr. King and Father Ted, and the street trees and flowers maintained by DTSB, and cross paths with guests from one of 3 hotels, see diners headed to or from dozens of restaurants, or the most striking change, run across hundreds of people who don't just work or recreate downtown, but live here. Put simply, downtown South Bend is back. And I'm pleased to report that there's more where that came from as we prepare to celebrate the opening of the Ivy at Berlin Place, begin a major office development at Jefferson and Main, and count numerous future projects underway or in planning, including a major expansion of our St. Joseph County Public Library. And our economic development has not been confined to downtown. We recently celebrated the new Embassy Suites opening at Eddy Commons as the project's Phase 2 development moves to completion. Our northwest side has seen over $900 million in city-assisted development, bringing hundreds of jobs to new industry and logistics employers. Overall, across the city, just in the time since I took office, and just counting the city-related economic development deals done, we've partnered on over $850 million in project investment and supported over 4,000 new jobs, seeing unemployment fall by nearly 7%. But it's not enough to celebrate the top-line numbers and the averages. Our city still has many, many low-income residents. Income inequality and wealth inequality persist. We know that African American households earn half that on average of Caucasian households in our city, that Black and Latino home ownership is below that of white residents. It's one reason why we are investing in underserved parts of town, like the West Side, where we have targeted resources on home repair, improved public facilities, and enhanced our streetscapes, while recently opening the West Side Small Business Resource Center. And we are working to support minority entrepreneurship as a purchaser, with leadership from their Office of Diversity and Inclusion, led by Christina Brooks. And with support from our partners at Accelerator for America, we're one of the first cities in the country to generate a community prospectus for opportunity zones, working to steer new investment to lower income areas of our city. And we're investing not just in places, but in people. Now in its third year, our Pathways Workforce Development Program has supported hundreds of South Bend residents with career training and certifications, empowering them to thrive in a changing economy. We also recognize the role that organized labor can play in providing skills training and pathways to the middle class. And we were pleased to work with local labor organizations in developing a responsible bidder ordinance that ensures a fair playing field for all who compete for city business. Meanwhile, we're becoming ever more connected with the region and the world through assets like South Bend International Airport. As a mayor and as a somewhat increasingly frequent user of the airport, I have been delighted to see this growth, including the qualification as an international airport and the increased routes and service. When an airline adds a route here, as most recently with the connections to Dallas and Charlotte, it is both a vote of confidence in the present economy and an engine for future growth. It's a good thing that we have more hotel rooms in this city as well as more ways of getting here. The Carter Work Project in Mishawaka and South Bend brought thousands of people to this community, as did the sold-out Garth Brooks concert at Notre Dame Stadium and the NHL Winter Classic. And more opportunities to showcase our community are ahead, with major events like the U.S. Men's Senior Open and the Midwest League All-Star Game coming our way. South Bend has become a destination, not just for event-goers and tourists, but for leaders from around the country and the world, as we hosted the U.S. Conference of Mayors Task Force on Automation for a key meeting, saw Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti's Accelerator for America nonprofit host its inaugural gathering here, entertained visits from officials and diplomats from the United Kingdom, Argentina, France, China, Israel, Germany, and more, and hosted tours from some of the most accomplished technology investors and founders in Silicon Valley. More than ever, South Bend is on the map. Now, we have a once-in-a-generation chance to seize another transformative opportunity, linking downtown Chicago with downtown South Bend by rail for the first time since 1970, through improvements to the last miles of the South Shore line. We're still awaiting results this summer from an in-depth study, building on previous work to help us envision the possibility of a link that connects downtown to downtown, even while other alternatives are still being assessed. If this proves feasible, and if we can validate the previous estimates that this could be done for $100 million or less, then we expect that South Bend can see at least a 4-to-1 return on this investment. And I expect and hope that we can achieve this goal by the year 2025. The kind of growth we're seeing here doesn't just happen. It requires a vibrant civic life, robust quality of place, and a strong foundation of good infrastructure and public safety. When it comes to law enforcement and crime, the city's progress over my lifetime has been dramatic. When I was a child here, it was not uncommon to see over 20 murders in a year, reflecting national trends. But sustained work across this community has helped drive major reductions, most notably in gun violence. Still, my phone lights up far, far too often with the latest report of an act of violence in our city. That's why we built a community coalition around the group violence intervention, a proven strategy that relies on close engagement between social services, law enforcement, faith leaders, and the community at large. Working together, we have held down the number of group and gang-related shootings in this city, and I believe this program is saving lives. Our expanded street outreach team is connecting with even more at-risk individuals to provide stability and guidance. And this year, we are enhancing our social media capability to preempt conflicts that start online and lead to violence in the real world. Our city's safety depends on an atmosphere of trust between neighbors and officers. A resident cannot live well in our city if he or she fears being treated unfairly, and an officer can't do his or her job without the support of residents. To help build trust, the police department has worked hard to become the most professional of its kind in the state, with new approaches to career path development and higher than ever levels of professional accountability and public transparency. We have become one of the first departments to establish an online transparency hub with information on everything from recruiting procedures to use of force incidents. We've implemented body cameras department-wide and have encouraged officers to step outside vehicles for over 7,500 foot patrols in neighborhoods and schools last year alone. Nearly 1,000 kids last year participated in the South Bend Police Athletic League, and officers built new relationships, according to the philosophy of Chief Ruskowski's relationship-based policing, with events from small neighborhood cookouts to record-breaking Cops and Goblins trick-or-treat night, welcoming over 6,500 people to Four Winds Field. In this city, we recognize that public safety is a community-wide effort. Under Chief Cox's leadership, our fire department has responded to over 20,000 emergency calls for service last year, with a department more diverse than ever and benefiting from exceptional training. We continue to invest in the facilities they need to succeed, from expanding our world-class Luther Taylor Fire Training Center to a new Station 4 on the west side with features that reduce cancer risk for firefighters. And on the east side, a robust and positive community dialogue resulted in a Fire Station 9 that we look forward to opening this summer, with a water-facing boat truck garage to quickly respond to water rescue emergencies. Our Swiftwater River Rescue Unit continues to be a national leader in training, and members of the Swiftwater Rescue Team were deployed to South Carolina as part of the response to Hurricane Florence, helping to rescue over 160 people, and I'm told a number of pets. Our fire department remains focused also on prevention, with smoke alarm blitzes in different neighborhoods, installing thousands of smoke alarms and carbon monoxide alarms since 2012. This has helped us to attain one of the highest ratings in the state from ISO, and will pursue the highest possible designation soon, reflecting our safer city and helping to lower insurance costs for residents. We're also developing an innovative community paramedicine group to help avoid ER visits and ambulance trips for frequent users of EMS. By serving and redirecting individuals with non-emergency needs, the program frees up 911 calls and hospital beds, while saving tax dollars and, most importantly, improving patient outcomes. EMTs have also been on the front lines of coping with the opioid epidemic. Our entire city continues to work to deal with this scourge, which is one reason we are participating in a lawsuit against irresponsible pharmaceutical companies to hold them accountable for the choices that help contribute to this epidemic. But much of the work is up to us, and that's why we've been engaging in the clinical community in dialogue about the best way forward, and launching a partnership with Beacon Health and Oaklawn to fund the certification of recovery coaches who guide individuals along the path from overdose to recovery. We also face a major public health challenge in this city with lead exposure. City water consistently tests as high quality and healthy. But most houses in our city were built before the 1978 ban on lead paint, which means exposure from paint in homes is a major concern. After learning about high blood levels in children on the northwest side, we have teamed up with community partners to expand testing and remediation sources for residents. We've worked to deliver free lead testing for all primary school students in South Bend Community Schools and have conducted 3 major events to date, open to all students and hosted by schools located in the highest risk neighborhoods. This work will continue with the next event set for Harrison Elementary next week and another at Lincoln Elementary later this spring. And we urge families to take advantage of this opportunity. Last year came the welcome news that we have secured over $3 million in competitive grant money to remediate homes with lead risk, including $2.3 million in sought-after federal funds. This will help us join forces with our partners, including the St. Joe County Health Department, the South Bend Medical Foundation, the Michiana Health Information Network, the University of Notre Dame and the Housing Authority, and others, to ensure we have a proactive strategy to protect our children. Meanwhile, we have addressed homelessness with a historic concentration of city resources and attention. In 2017, our working group on chronic homelessness brought city officials, service providers, and community stakeholders together to identify solutions. The group endorsed a housing-first approach with two major policy recommendations. One, expand permanent supportive housing units, and two, create an intake or gateway center as a single point of entry into services. Keeping with these recommendations, the city has now helped to fund 32 permanent supportive housing units at Oliver Apartments, operated by South Bend Heritage, and linked up with the Center for the Homeless to add another 28 units in scattered site housing, bringing us more than halfway to the goal of 82 units recommended by the working group. We've worked with providers to fund a managed, coordinated entry process, which guides those experiencing homelessness to permanent supportive housing. And in 2019, we will continue our efforts to locate a gateway center to serve as a central intake point for those who are most difficult to house. Meeting this goal will require community support. It is not enough for us to set aside money and agree that more should be done for the homeless. A facility will have to go somewhere in particular. And when we do identify a site that can get the needed community support, we must commit to making sure that both the city as a whole and the area around the site end up safer and better than before. The other key part of our city's foundation is infrastructure, from wastewater to street paving, led by the Department of Public Works and Eric Horvath, Jatin Kane, and their team. This time of year, especially with the freeze and thaw cycles we've been through, we all have potholes on our mind. The city filled over 22,000 of them last year, and more than 365,000 since my administration began. We have paved over 140 lane miles of street and replaced nearly 500,000 feet of curbs and sidewalks since 2012, most recently including new sidewalks and curbs near Monroe and Studebaker schools as part of the Safe Routes to Schools program. I am proud of what we've been able to do with the resources we have. But I am also concerned about the sustainability of our current approach to funding infrastructure. We celebrated when the General Assembly acted in 2017 to adjust the gas tax to create more funds for paving roads. But revenues this year are down compared to last year, and we will be watching closely to see if this number rises again, as we hope in the years to come. Meanwhile, in Washington, after raising hopes and expectations around a national infrastructure plan, the administration has made it clear that local and state governments will continue to bear most of the burden of funding our aging physical infrastructure. Right now, our staff tells me we have enough funding to pave every lane mile of road in this city every 100 years. Unless an affordable paving material is invented that can last more than about a dozen, it's going to take a new revenue model to meet our road funding needs for the long run. Despite these limitations, though, we have targeted road funding and addressed the streets most in need of improvement, and used economic development funds to fund streetscape improvements that help pay for themselves in economic growth. This included, of course, the famous Smart Streets program. It took some persuasion at the time, as we were seeking the $25 million in funding that made this conversion possible. But in the 2 short years since we delivered the reimagined downtown streets, we've seen over $100 million in net private investment, a terrific return on our public dollar, and more importantly, we've gained a healthier and more vibrant downtown. We're going to follow up this year with continued work on cross streets and improvements to Michigan Street. And across the city, you'll soon find new wayfinding signage, which will guide residents and visitors to South Bend's key destinations with aesthetically pleasing signage that evokes the city and also incorporates our newer South Bend flag. There's another piece of infrastructure that is quietly being put together, quiet being the operative word. At the urging of neighbors and council members, we have identified funds to bring quiet zones for train horns to the west side. We expect to complete these safety improvements soon so that by the end of the year, trains can pass through the whole city, from city limit to city limit, without being required automatically to sound their horns. Meanwhile, our waterworks continues to deliver billions of gallons of clean, safe drinking water every year. And many of you by now have heard my fondness for boasting the fact that we have the smartest sewers in the world, building on work that began under Mayor Lickey. Based on this technology, we believe South Bend can meet its Clean Water Act obligations for $500 million less than originally proposed, saving $5,000 for every man, woman, child in the city. Provided the federal government lets us. So we are in the process right now of renegotiating our consent decree with the EPA in hopes of clearance to pursue this greener and more affordable plan. Affordability remains an important concern for the community, for the council, and for our administration. Access to clean water and sanitation should be among the most fundamental human rights. Yet 43% of families in St. Joe County have to make daily choices about which services they can afford due to their income, which is why the city is now in the initial planning phase of creating lifeline sewer and water rates for low-income families for basic water use to help struggling families meet their needs affordably and responsibly. In sum, we're using some of the most advanced technologies in the world, as well as making investments that amount to the largest public works project in the history of the city. And we are establishing a stormwater utility, joining other cities in the region, to help fund updates to our system and green infrastructure to keep up with extreme weather. In the past, we've had to take away dollars from paving to respond to weather-related sewer needs. But we shouldn't have to choose between good roads and good stormwater management. That being said, the truth is that no city can afford to build sewer infrastructure that could comfortably handle what are supposed to be once-in-a-lifetime historic floods on a routine basis. In the span of less than 2 years, our city experienced 2 such flooding events, and I fear that there's more where that came from. Climate change is upon us, today. This is no longer theoretical, and it is no longer happening only in the Arctic. We're going to make sure that South Bend is part of the solution. We may only be a small piece of the global puzzle, but cities around the world are increasingly coordinating our actions on climate, knowing that even if our national governments around the world fail to lead, we cities can still make a tremendous impact between us. That's why I've signed on to the Global Covenant of Mayors, a commitment among thousands of cities representing hundreds of millions of people around the globe, all pledging to take action to address climate change, because if nobody else will, cities must. Television news often portrays climate change with imagery of pieces of ice falling off of ice shelves in the Antarctic. But when we think about climate change, think about our city, think about what happened right here, and think about what's at stake if we don't do something to change it. So we're doing all kinds of work around the city, with new fire stations in Howard Park being certified with green, high-performing buildings, solar experiments at the Century Center, 95% conversion of our solid waste fleet to run on compressed natural gas. And, I should mention, most of that natural gas comes from converting human waste to biogas, fueling our city trash trucks in a closed-loop system that our team likes to call poop to power to make our services more efficient. We will truly stop at nothing in order to meet our obligations. In more visually pleasing news, sustainability is also part of why we've added bike lanes and street trees and installed free electric vehicle chargers. We've offered solar-powered lampposts as part of the Light Up South Bend program and supported in-home home energy efficiency assessments, all while updating our own codes and procedures to make it easier to go solar. Next week, we are launching a climate action planning process to help identify the best strategies for reducing emissions further while supporting our community priorities. And I hope to collaborate with Council to make this climate action plan an official part of our community-wide strategy by the end of the year. Perhaps the best measure of the progress of our city is the condition of our neighborhoods. This has been a top priority for the administration from the start, beginning with the Vacant and Abandoned Properties Task Force. And since then, we've continued to focus on neighborhood improvements in every part of the city. Along key corridors, we've matched small business improvement through our facade matching grant program from Lincoln Way West and Western Avenue to Miami Street and Mishawaka Avenue. Nurturing these corridors, we are rewarding South Bend small business owners and unlocking future growth. This year, we're going to expand the program to Portage and Elwood and Linden Avenue. This work reinforces, I see some council members who are enthusiastically applauding that. This is going to reinforce the West Side Main Streets plan that added new streetscapes to Western Avenue. And we've been working with residents to build out a plan for that Portage-Elwood neighborhood and in other areas where we are currently visioning, for example, with the Near Northwest neighborhood, to enlist resident feedback and shape proposed projects for the future. Our neighborhood development team, part of the new structure of the Department of Community Investment under the leadership of James Mueller, has worked to help applicants through the tax sale process for vacant lots and is collaborating with community partners like 466 Works and the NNN to develop housing in the southeast and near northwest neighborhoods while assisting individual homeowners with housing counseling and support for working out potential defaults. I was also delighted this year to announce the new South Bend Home Repair Program, which brings together 3 separate lines of effort on home repair and will make over $1 million available for neighborhood upgrades. These resources will reinforce our work in the new Office of Engagement and Economic Empowerment, which exists to promote community action and dialogue on inclusion and economic mobility, taking on efforts ranging from reducing eviction rates to improving access to capital. The city is also preparing for the upcoming 2020 census, supporting outreach and working to strengthen the accuracy of our address database to make sure the census is fair and equitable. I am very concerned that the federal administration's proposed, untested, and legally questionable addition of a so-called citizenship question to the census will lead to an undercount in South Bend in 2020, just as we're growing again. And so we are closely following the federal litigation on this issue. It is in everyone's interest for every person in this city and every city to be counted. The Department of Code Enforcement, led by Tracy Skibbins and a phenomenal team, has continued its work, keeping our neighborhoods safe and clean, not just as an enforcer, but as a partner. Last year, the department partnered with resident volunteers on 18 neighborhood cleanups, triple the total from the year before, while the Animal Care and Control Division has tripled adoption rates in recent years. The 1,000 days of the 1,000 Houses in 1,000 Days program is behind us, but we continue to work in this area. We've cleared the major backlog, but the work continues for code enforcement on these vacant and abandoned properties. If you start the clock in 2013, we've now addressed 1,447. Many were demolished, but the most heartening news out of this initiative is that 657 of these properties, almost half, have been repaired rather than torn down. It's with a view toward continuing our progress in neighborhood quality of life that last week I signed into law the new Rental Safety Verification Program, or RSVP. This program will allow the city to proactively address violations in rental housing that can cause health issues and safety concerns for residents, not by adding new rules, but by empowering the city to ensure compliance with existing ones. Starting with active cases and areas at high risk of lead poisoning, our purpose is to protect vulnerable tenants, stimulate reinvestment, and reduce exposure to harmful agents like lead. I want to thank our administration team, local housing leaders, community activists, and of course the members of the Common Council for the collaboration that made this leap forward possible. We're also working closely with the Housing Authority to make sure our most vulnerable residents experience safe, quality, affordable housing. This has not been an easy task, especially given reduced resources and the recent federal government shutdown. Since I first approached the board with concerns last fall, a process of improved communication on both sides has taken place at both the staff and leadership level, with the City and Housing Authority working together, and I want to thank Board President Dr. Calvin and the team for their commitment to improved and strong communication. It's hard to believe that 4 years ago, there was no Department of Venues, Parks, and Arts. This newly designed department, brought together under the leadership of Aaron Perry, has been recognized now as a statewide leader in parks and facilities management, and 2019 will be the most remarkable year yet of transformation in our shared public spaces. The MySB Parks and Trails Plan, representing the largest investment in public spaces in our city's history, is about to enter its most active year. Last year, just 10% of that initiative's budget had been spent. By this year, we expect to be over 80% complete. The work is citywide and features so many improvements they can't even fit into this speech. We've seen splash pads at Fremont Park, the new dog park at Rum Village, an improved entrance at the Martin Luther King Center, volunteer-driven upgrades at Kelly Park, and more. And it was particularly gratifying to open the renovated Charles Black Center in the LaSalle Park neighborhood, investing millions on the simple belief that every neighborhood in this city deserves first-rate facilities. The work continues this year with access for people with disabilities, a re-envisioned Leaper Park with a restored Studebaker fountain due to be opened this fall, and work underway for a transformed Howard Park with a new community building, a new playground, event space, and an ice rink and ice trail that we hope will be open for skating at Thanksgiving. Maintaining a first-rate park system isn't just about fun. It's about equity, value, and health. That's why we've joined the 10-Minute Walk Initiative, which challenges cities to ensure that all residents are within 10 minutes on foot of quality green space. We are on track to reach 80% access by the end of 2020, unlocking benefits for thousands more South Bend residents. Our trails have been enhanced, increasingly interconnected, and we've engaged with the neighborhood around the proposed coal line trail while applying for multiple grants to build out more connections. New this winter, VPA unveiled Trails 365, a commitment to clear major trails of snowfall within 24 hours, just as we work to clear our streets. And thanks to infrastructure investment and the enthusiasm of partners like the Bike Michiana Coalition, we are now one of just 2 cities in the state of Indiana to be designated as a silver-level bicycle-friendly community. Here at the Morris, we saw a record number of performances, and we'll beat that even further this year. Tonight, you might have noticed you were being welcomed by an improved John Hunt Plaza with a new marquee. And down Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, something, by the way, that we are very proud is now Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. Down that street, the Century Center is seeing increased bookings thanks to more hotel rooms more than doubling in our downtown, while our participation with the state-led Regional Cities program is helping to deliver a transformed new entrance to the Potawatomi Zoo that is just the beginning of their visionary strategic plan. Since the summer of 2015, the city has also come together for week-long celebrations of arts, culture, and entertainment. What began as SB 150 has developed into Best Week Ever. Every neighborhood comes alive as part of this shared award-winning experience. We're already planning for 2019 and making sure that each year we will deliver the best week ever. Behind all of these activities and results is an extraordinary team of employees and leaders, too many to name tonight, all striving to meet the city's mission, to deliver services that empower everyone to thrive, with hard work grounded in the administration's core values: excellence, innovation, accountability, inclusion, and empowerment. We strive to be a great employer for great employees. Early in this administration, it meant pursuing politically unpopular salary adjustments, helping to bring our pay at every level more in line with competing employers. And each year since, in partnership with the Council, we have done more to make sure that compensation is fair and competitive. Realizing that a $7.25 minimum wage is not enough to get by, we've acted to bring the minimum wage of a city employee to $10.10 an hour and continue to urge area employers to do the same. I'm also glad to report that having completed our first full year of offering paid parental leave, one of the first in the region, the policy was a success. 38 employees received 6 full weeks to get off to the right start with new children. In fact, something that might register as a bit of a baby boom among our fellow city employees. And the city is running better than ever. These decisions helped us earn the Best Benefits and Happiest Place to Work designations from the South Bend Tribune in 2018, and we will soon introduce new benefits that HR leadership with Kira Clark at the helm is pursuing to encourage volunteerism and to allow employees to donate vacation time to others in need. At a time when our nation remains the only industrialized country without mandatory family leave, when minimum wages across the country are often too low to make a living, I want to restate my conviction, based on our experience as an employer with a tight budget, that doing right by our people has made us more successful and more cost-effective than ever. Also behind the scenes, led by Stephanie Steele, our Department of Law has not only helped keep city liability low, but has also been an engine of transparency, handling over 16,000 requests for information since I took office, with not one single finding of violation of the Access to Public Records Act. And as I mentioned earlier, our Office of Diversity and Inclusion is introducing a number of measures to make sure the City of South Bend is inclusive for employees, for residents, for visitors alike. Inclusive talent management is helping us to reduce barriers to employment and create a transparent promotion and retention process. We're now conducting a diversity purchasing disparity study to make sure that minority and women-owned businesses in South Bend get fair opportunities to compete for city business. And we continue to work with community partners on the My Brother's Keeper initiative, launched by President Obama and locally anchored by Beacon, to tear down barriers for young men and boys of color. While we are on the topic of inclusion, I want to express my conviction on the importance of passing real, meaningful hate crime legislation in this state. The South Bend Common Council has expressed its support, as has Governor Holcomb, and yet the State Assembly has been unable to deliver. Our community stands strong in the belief that this year should be Indiana's last as one of just 5 states in the Union without such a law at a time like this. Meanwhile, our fiscal team, which has transitioned in leadership from Jen Hockenhull to new City Controller Dan Parker, has helped the city to make the best use of scarce taxpayer dollars. Unlike the federal government, the city doesn't get to just print money, nor do we get to spend without limits. Budget season has always forced us to make difficult decisions, and I want to thank the Common Council, particularly the leadership of President Tim Scott and Personnel and Finance Committee Chair Karen White, for their work with our administration finance team to deliver a 2019 budget process that I believe was the smoothest yet. We're good at budgeting around here. Our city received multiple awards for our budget presentation and process from the Government Finance Officers Association, and we continue to have the rare distinction of a AA bond rating, independent confirmation that we are one of the most fiscally sound cities in the state of Indiana. The state has thrown another challenge at us in the form of the so-called 2020 fiscal curb, which will entail a reduction of millions of dollars to our revenues across St. Joe County. But we've been preparing for this for years. identifying efficiencies and controlling costs, and we will continue to collaborate on tough choices this budget season to ensure that the 2020 budget is both responsive and responsible. One of the most remarkable sets of achievements in this city in this decade has been its arrival as a national leader in the field of civic innovation. With leadership from Santiago Garces, who recently left as City Innovation Officer, the first to hold that position, Dan O'Connor leading our IT team, and our new extraordinary city leadership, new leader for the Innovation Office, Denise Rydell, we are taking on opportunities that we couldn't have envisioned even at the beginning of this decade. We started with the basics, including an effort to persuade some coworkers that it was worth experimenting with a new email program called Microsoft Outlook. And to see the progress that this city has made, especially the team driving that work, has been extraordinary. The 311 Center is something that's hard to picture this city without, but 8 years ago it was just a campaign promise. Now, representatives there have handled almost 1 million calls on everything from filling potholes to picking up Christmas trees. More recently, 311 has partnered with Vets Community Connections to connect veterans to available resources. And we've placed the same information the 311 representatives use online in a redesigned website so that residents can get questions answered anytime. Our 311 system and website stand alongside lower tech methods for collecting feedback, like the Mayor's Night Out events that have led to hundreds of in-person meetings for residents with me and department heads, all with the goal of better service. Just one of many ways that our Mayor's office staff goes above and beyond to make sure that the 14th floor is accessible to all. Internally, the SB STAT process for identifying performance improvements has found efficiencies in fire, police, public works, and parks. And in the spirit of transparency, we are now publishing SB STAT presentations on our website so that you can see the same information that comes to me in these targeted and effective meetings. From equipment investments like iPads in the fields, helping us optimize leaf pickup, to investments in our people through the SB Academy training process for building technical skills, we were ensuring that this community has top talent and top technology at the service of our residents. Here, too, we are mindful of equity because the digital divide threatens to reinforce inequality in the new economy. That's why in 2016, we introduced free Wi-Fi downtown and are equipping community centers and housing authority properties with internet access. I am proud of our administration team, making sometimes heroic efforts, too many to list in this evening's remarks. But I also want to acknowledge that we in our administration could do nothing without the partnerships that drive our city. We've worked with federal partners, from law enforcement to environmental protection. We've moved past old suspicions between South Bend and Indianapolis to mobilize state partnerships and economic development to benefit our city. We have collaborated with our colleges and universities on initiatives from the Bowman Creek educational ecosystem to legal aid for those most in need. We've teamed up with the county on matters from public safety to public health and done everything we can to support our South Bend community schools. The private sector, social sector, public sector are all working together in this community to move it forward. One of the most rewarding developments during my time in office has been the growing partnership with the Pokagon Band of Potawatomi Indians. We are so proud of the recognition that finally came to Pokagon sovereign land within our city limits. History will record that when federally recognized Indian country first came to Indiana, it did so here in the city limits of South Bend. And now we have begun collecting the first installments of millions of dollars in benefits agreed to with Four Winds to support everything from parks and recreation to childhood development. And we expect our partnership with this area's original residents to continue to bear fruit for generations to come. As South Bend's national reputation has grown, so has our ability to attract support from national philanthropic partners. And tonight, I want to highlight just two such partnerships. The first helps to show how we can respond to the accelerating pace of change in the nature of work. As chair of the U.S. Conference of Mayors Task Force on Automation, I have seen cities across the country grappling with the question of how best to prepare workers for a future in which my generation is likely to change careers more often than my parents changed job titles. One thing we know is that skills will become more important than ever. Last spring, we announced a partnership with the Drucker Institute to establish a Center for Lifelong Learning, the first of its kind. Financed by the philanthropic arms of Google and Walmart, this will lead to a platform for our residents to develop personal, professional, and technical skills as they adapt to the workforce of the future. The initial commitment of $500,000 has helped us to do early design work on a platform for early learning that could be a national model, and we are working to scale this up with even more private support to come. The second collaboration has to do with transportation and the poverty trap of being a low-income worker who lacks reliable transportation to work. With this problem in mind, we entered the Bloomberg Mayor's Challenge, competing with over 320 cities of all sizes from around the world. Last fall, we were announced as one of 9 winners of a $1 million grant to fund our proposed solution based on the success of our pilot. Our solution is based on the concept of transportation as a benefit. The city partnered with local employers to arrange for rideshare as a backup option to get employees to work. Over 80% of participating employees said this led them to work more hours and bring home more earnings. And employers in the pilot showed openness to helping fund this as a benefit in the future. This innovative approach gained attention from around the world, with South Bend officials invited to address leaders of governments as far away as Paris and Dubai. Any place with low density and lower income workers stands to benefit from this approach. And over the coming months, we'll be using that $1 million grant award to scale up the program, attracting new employers and expanding job security for workers. We believe this will be an excellent complement to the services of Transpo, which is seeing strong progress under its new leadership, and we're looking forward to the results. Speaking of transformation and change, I should acknowledge that the political process is now underway to decide on the city officials who will take office next year. A year from now, this speech will be given by a new mayor, leading a new administration with a different style, different strengths, and perhaps different priorities. This is the most natural and healthy feature of our democratic system, its ability to balance continuity and change. The new mayor and council will face no shortage of challenges, addressing land use on vacant lots that used to hold collapsing houses but aren't yet ready for new construction, ensuring our level of violent crime does not go back to prior levels and driving it down even further, further closing the gap on income and employment relative to the rest of the nation, and doing so in a way that reduces the persistent and glaring social and racial inequity in our society and our city, connecting us to a region and a world that is becoming more dynamic and demanding at a time when connectivity is key, partnering with others from businesses to universities to bring about results that make us all better off, leading us in celebrating what is best in our city and holding us together whenever we face the worst of what our times can throw at us. The work of a mayor, the speaking and the listening, the hiring and the firing, the building and redesigning, investing and implementing, celebrating and mourning, is a daunting task for even the most confident person. But it can be done well through teamwork and commitment and a readiness to put policy ahead of politics. The next mayor will have the benefit of leading a growing city, a rejuvenated city, a city headed in the right direction, benefiting from the work of these 8 years, just as I stand on the shoulders of those who have come before. Now, you hear a lot of numbers from me. You've heard a lot of numbers in this speech, and anyone who knows me knows that you'll hear a lot of numbers from me in general. Because I believe in carefully measuring our outcomes, watching what works and what doesn't, based on hard data and adjusting our approach as we learn. But the truth is, the single thing that I'm proudest of in our city over these last 7 years and change is something that I can't put into numbers. It is the simple fact that this city believes in itself again. I'm under no illusion. I'm under no illusion that I alone ought to take credit for that. It is a reflection of the dynamism of our neighborhoods, the passion of our advocates, the urgency of our leaders in every sector, and the legacy of those who came before. But I do believe we helped. I believe that the combination of careful listening and bold action, deep tradition and original thinking that characterizes the women and men of this administration has helped to bend the trajectory of this city and cement the status of these years as South Bend's comeback decade. And I'm thankful to have played my part in that. From running for office, which is itself an act of hope, to serving every day, I have sought to live out the values of this city and call fellow residents to be our very best. And you have called me to be more than I used to be, time and time again. I'm not done serving this city yet, but since this is my last State of the City address, I want to take this opportunity to thank you for giving me this chance to serve. I love this city. I love South Bend. Enough to move home when not everybody understood why. Enough to write a book about this city. Enough to give over the better part of my 30s to trying to lead it. More people should hear our story, South Bend's story. When I go on the road, I talk about our experience as a metaphor for what needs to happen in our country. America needs to find ways, as South Bend has, to embrace our future without fear and adapt to change so that it works for all of us. America needs to seek greatness, not by dredging it up from some impossible again, but by looking squarely to the future just as our forebears did. Like our city, our country needs to use technology and innovation in a fashion that is true to our history and tradition, but fearless and original to make everyone better off. I love this hometown of ours. I love walks and runs along the river, block parties in our neighborhoods, ball games and meals out in our downtown, and public art in our parks. I love the seasons, all 4 of them. When I look out the window of the 14th floor and I see the setting sun glinting off the frozen railroad tracks on the west side on a winter afternoon, or when I smell the moist summer air in our backyard as Chasten and I fire up the barbecue grill on a hot July evening, I think of how lucky I am to live in this city of ours, this extraordinary community of 100,000 souls first known to the Potawatomi as Ribbon Town, this river town, this factory town and university town, this green and gray city, full of people generous and bold and committed and gentle. For as long as I am your mayor, I will serve this city to the best of my ability. And for as long as I live, this will be home. Thank you.